Vicki Hogarth, and welcome to Southwest Magazine. Joining us today are Sergeant Chris Henderson and Staff Sergeant Geoff Peters to tell us about policing in Charlotte County. Thank you both for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
Let's talk a little bit about what are some of the current issues that you're dealing with around Charlotte County.
Charlotte County, as far as crime and occurrence types, typically, it's not a lot different than any other parts of the province or Canada for that matter. Obviously, we see traffic and vehicular issues. There's a number of property crime, fraud type files that we deal with here, as well as working with and supporting the mandates of other agencies. So whether that be Department of Social Development, Ambulance New Brunswick, assisting the hospitals, NB Power with Point LaPro Nuclear Generating Station. Our officers are engaged in that kind of thing right across the region. So diverse types of work, and that brings with it, unique challenges that, are kind of specific to our area.
And let's talk about those challenges. Staff Sergeant Peters, what are some of the challenges that you see regularly, especially when policing a rural area?
It's pretty much a constant. I've worked different places across the country, and as has Chris, and without fail, it's police visibility and police presence and involvement in the community, which is very, very important to establish relationships with people in the community. So, but we. Within the RSC, we have, I always lose count, I think it's 7 or 8 councils total, if you include Campbell and Graham and Ann. And we try to meet with them on a regular basis as much as we can. But the message that we hear and we understand is that we don't see the police enough. And that's, the average person, you're talking to them at Carmen's or around town or somewhere in St. George, and we never see you guys enough. So that's something that we struggle with. Policing today is vastly different than it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago when we grew up. Chris and I are both from the area here, so we grew up here and we understand what it used to be in the the 70s and 80s. But it's changed a lot, and our approach to crime prevention and things like that has changed as well. So, but yeah, that's the types of crimes that we're seeing is no surprise to anyone. Is property crime. We are fortunate here. We don't have an abundance of non-targeted violent crime here. We don't have that you see in other parts of the country. And again, traffic. Chris touched on that, but traffic is a big one. We have a large number of driving complaints, traffic complaints, collisions. And also general types of calls that people don't necessarily think of the police being involved in, but mental health is one that consumes a lot of our time. Mental health calls and general assisting other agencies. So Chris touched on a few of them, but things like DFO with the upcoming Elber season and things like that, border enforcement, all sorts of, like I say, every time I try to come up with a list, we generally forget to mention things, but.
When we look at initiatives like the camera rebate program in St. Andrews that has allowed more individuals in the community to have cameras on their properties, how are the ways that people in the community can assist what you're doing, be it installing cameras or making your job a little bit easier in terms of finding evidence?
Well, we kind of bring the same message every time we go to a council meeting, and I think this is a great opportunity to relay that. But oftentimes people will say, well, I don't call the police because they're not going to do anything, or they don't investigate. But the biggest thing people can do is report things, regardless of how minor they may be. And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to come to the police station or you have to call it in. We have an online crime reporting tool that's through our website that you can report minor things. And I always use the example of somebody having the lawnmower stolen. Mm-hmm. So maybe you have a cottage somewhere on the water, and you come into the spring after being locked up all winter to open it up, and the lock got busted off the shed, and somebody stole the lawnmower. So, while that might not be in and of itself, you don't have a video camera at your cottage, and there's no witnesses. I'm not going to bother. It's just a couple $100 for a lawnmower, but reporting that to us there might have been somebody next door that had something stolen. The other piece I give is, a suspicious vehicle. So, rural New Brunswick, I live in rural New Brunswick. You know your neighbors, you know who's around, you know who you expect to see. If something doesn't look right, there's a vehicle or people that don't look like they belong there, they probably don't. So call, and even if they do, call us and let us sort that out. So it might be somebody that we're looking for. It might be somebody that has a bad things that they want to do. That's why they're in the neighborhood. Or it could be just somebody out for a Sunday drive. So I always say, like, on policing, it's we always kind of a time and a place. So if you're out for a drive in Scotch Ridge on a Sunday and you see a car going by, well, it's probably somebody out for a Sunday drive. But if it's 3 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday night, well, why are they there? They're not out for a drive. So those are the types of things that, a time and a place. What is that vehicle or that person look like they should be there?
When it comes to something that I know the community can find frustrating, and I'm sure it's extremely frustrating for you too, when we think of catch and release and what you're up against there, how does that affect your job when it's out of your hands? You can make an arrest, but it doesn't always lead to charges.
Well, in Canada, obviously, there's a judicial and legislative framework with which both the police and the courts operate within. I mean, we've got things like. The founding presumption is that people are innocent until they're proven guilty in a court of law, either by a judge or a jury of their peers. And, that person, when they're waiting to appear before the courts, essentially, if they're released into the community, the courts will place sufficient conditions on that person to essentially ensure two things. One, that the offense, isn't repeated, and that the person attends court, right? And there's also a third thing, which is called the tertiary grounds, which is the public interest. But that standard is pretty high, and that's why we see, somebody might be released for a property crime, like a break and enter on, an undertaking or a judicial release, and then that person will commit another offense and be subject to fresh charges even when they're on release. So that's an ongoing topic that is I know at the federal level where those kinds of laws are made. They're always assessing and looking at should we tighten this? Should we maybe make it less onerous on the accused? To ensure that we're not penalizing them before they're convicted. So as far as police go, I mean, our job's pretty simple. We operate within the law. If somebody's on release and that person breaches the release or commits new offenses, then we we'll deal with that person again and compel them to court. Eventually, like I was saying to you earlier, if somebody has a number of charges and they're released and we arrest them again, those charges, the initial charges, don't go away. So sooner or later, that person will be held accountable for what they've done. We've seen locally here a number of cases recently where we've had people, without naming people, but you've seen their face several times in our media releases. Well, some of those individuals, as of recently, have been convicted and sent to prison. So things keep adding up, and we're not deterred as the police force of jurisdiction. We'll continue to do what we need to do to A, keep people in the area safe, and B, hold people accountable when they commit offenses that obviously are detrimental to the community.
So it's also a great thing to know for the community. So if someone you do see back on the streets again, even if they had gone to court, that will be on their record and could contribute to if there are future crimes committed.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that when a person is convicted of a criminal offense in Canada, once they're convicted and the judge is looking at sentencing, that person's criminal history is a factor that's considered. So, ideally, that's not what happens. Ideally, the person that is dealt with by the courts changes their behavior and goes on to be a productive member of society. And there's cases where that happens. Unfortunately, there's also cases where a person continues that life of crime, and that's where that comes in, is that, well, you've been convicted of this offense 4 or 5 times, failing to appear for court, those kind of things, it all factors in.
And we have kind of touched on before about police visibility and being in the community, being seen. And I fully understand that people they want to see the police, and they think if, I look out my window in Maces Bay at 2 o'clock in the morning, I see a police car going by, that somehow makes me safer. And I understand that, that they believe that means that, we're there, and if they don't see us, then we're not there. Well, the way policing has changed over the past several decades is that we're focusing our time and our resources on the people that need it, to be blunt. And it's intelligent. We call it intelligence-based policing, but we're basically going after prolific offenders and people that are causing the crime. That's not to say that we're targeting person A, that person B is not out on the other end of the county doing something that we didn't know about. But we go based on statistics, and we tend to call them prolific offenders. So people, and I've worked across the country, but I've been back here now for about a year and a half, and it's a pretty small pool of people that are causing most of the crime. And I think everybody in Charlotte County can appreciate that and know who these people are. So, the comment I hear a lot of the time is, everybody, the cops know who's doing it. Why don't they go do something? Well, that's great, but we need that little thing called evidence in between to get them from that point to the court. So that's where we need the community. We don't police on our own. We need the support of the community. We need the eyes and ears of the community to help us, and we need people to follow through and give statements and participate in the court process. So sometimes we'll go to a call and I don't want anything done. I just want it on record. That's fine, but at the same time, we can't just go and arrest somebody based off hearsay. Because there is, we have a very robust Charter of Rights and Freedoms that's there to protect people for that reason. But we work with we have a host of people that work in headquarters, that criminal intelligence, criminal analysts, and the thing that, it's no surprise to anyone, but a lot of these people are traveling criminals, and I know Chris can provide some examples of this, but our West District of J Division, we work everywhere from Edmundston, Grand Falls, down to Grand Manan. The entire west side of the province is West District. And we have criminals that operate from Woodstock to Grand Bay, Westfield, and everywhere in between. So we have analysts that work on that. We have plainclothes units that are working on some of these things at a higher level. And, again, intelligence means that little bit of information or that car that you captured on your security camera at your house. You may not think that means anything, but that might be something that we can piece into our investigation that ends up in more charges for the people that need it.
Wow. Are there trends in crime that you see? I know in St. Andrews often they say it's a lot of lazy criminals, property crime if the door is unlocked.
Criminals by their very nature are opportunists. It's warm weather, for example. It's St. Andrews is a bit unique in that sense that we have a shadow population that comes in with the warmer weather. A lot of these people are here for good purposes. They own a summer home here, or they're coming here for a family vacation. But warm weather will also bring less desirable elements to the community. So when you leave your car unlocked on a residential street at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you're inside sleeping, and you've got your phone, you got your passports, your even change, or your earbuds, and they're left there, and they're quite visible through the window. It's not saying you deserve to have anything stolen. I'm not saying that, but you're creating the opportunity, and when you create the opportunity, there are people out there that will capitalize on that opportunity, and it really comes down to, just taking the few extra steps before you go to bed at night. Make sure your vehicles are secured. If you have an outdoor light, maybe have that on. And like Staff Sergeant Peters said, when you see something in your community, you live there, you know what's normal, what's not normal. You see somebody there, that person clearly doesn't belong. Looks like they're into something they shouldn't be into. Don't debate about it for an hour or two, and text your friend and say, should I call this in? Call it in. Call our non-urgent complaint line, or if it's something serious and life-threatening, then by all means 911. But report that, and it might be the nexus between two things. We have two parts of the puzzle. We're looking for the third. Maybe we didn't get somebody that had a good description of the guy, but maybe you did. That's our job, to piece that together and to, essentially complete the investigation. And if, something's happened in the community that would warrant charges, that's what we're here for. And we ultimately work for the community.
When it comes to the presence of drugs in the community, we heard a lot that in COVID there was this really this birth of a meth system in our community. It became a more popular drug at the time just because it could be produced easily and cheaply. What factor do drugs play in not only the crimes that you're looking to prevent, but just in terms of even the manufacturing of drugs in our community?
I go out on a limb and say that most of our crime is caused by drugs in one way or the other. So generally it's people stealing to feed a habit, stealing to pay debts. And I would say if you could magically take drugs out of the world tomorrow, wave your wand, your property crime in most places, including Charlotte County, would be almost zero. And I don't think that's any surprise to anyone. You know, you on the same time when you're talking about property crimes, you have things that are just wanton destruction of something for no reason. That tends to be maybe younger people that have a bit of alcohol on board. But you know, the vast majority of our crime is fueled by drugs, and then the combination of drugs and mental illness is, you know, a topic for another day discussion probably. But the two of them tend to fuel each other and just make things worse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then you have sophisticated groups, copper wire crimes and such. So it's an array of activities that you have to follow. How prevalent is that in what you're policing?
The thing with drug motivated crime or drug motivated theft, it's not specific to, you know, one area of the province or the country. I mean, these are trends that are taking place right across the country. You touched on copper wire theft, and I mean that obviously, you know, there's an opportunity there for gain by people that are, you know, obviously disingenuous and don't have a problem taking from others. And I mean, copper wire obviously creates safety issues. We have fatalities where people are, you know, stealing wire from substations, or, you know, whether it be like a air conditioning unit on a house. I mean, it certainly, but these things are taking place, you know, right across the country. And New Brunswick's no different. Methamphetamine that you brought up earlier. I mean, Geoff and I both have been policing for a couple decades, and I can tell you that, you know, 20 years ago in Western Canada, methamphetamine was very present in a lot of the communities that we were seeing pop up. And then it has worked its way east. And I mean, we've always had, you know, certain kinds of drugs in the community, you know, cocaine, crack cocaine. Methamphetamine is obviously one of the newer commodities in terms of popularity on the East Coast. But yeah, that there is a correlation. I mean, it definitely, you know, certain kinds of crime trends like frauds, thefts, you know, whether it be power tools, things that are, you know, can be fenced very quickly for traded for drugs, or, you know, copper wire, which can be obviously sold. And I mean, on a provincial level, like, we are using, you know, a crime reduction approach to, you know, identify trends with respect to things like copper theft. You know, they're not specific to one particular area. An offender might be, you know, moving between jurisdictions. Police, politicians, governmental agencies, we tend to think in terms of jurisdictional boundaries. You know, I live in, you know, the town of St. Andrews, or I, you know, am a member of the C10 RCMP, but criminals don't necessarily use those kinds of boundaries. They move around, you know, they're interconnected. They work with criminals from other areas. So police have you know, in the last number of years gotten better at sharing information and working, you know, whether it be with another police agency, another federal agency. You know, the same people that are, you know, committing crime might be, you know, fishing illegally. They might be, you know, evading tax, you know, things. So law enforcement shares information, and we work to kind of break down those barriers so that we can, like Geoff said, target that segment of the population that is, you know, essentially committing offenses and compromising the well-being of their community.
How does having a courthouse that's not in Charlotte County, does it take you off the road if you have to go to St. John? How much does that impact what you do?
It does to a degree. our officers obviously are required fairly regularly as witnesses at trials, so it does take them, and that it may fall on their days off, and it may fall when they're working. So if it falls when they're working, generally that means that that's one less officer that's on the road that day. It also in terms of transporting prisoners, because we do have to transport prisoners from our cells in St. George to St. John. So again, that does take time. So again, not to get into the political issues of the courthouse being removed, but it does. And then there's a component of we've noticed there's a component of people that frequently have a warrant for failing to attend court, and we take them to court, and their response to the judge is, well, I had no way to get here. So oftentimes people that don't have a vehicle, don't have a method of transportation, that is an issue. So I think personally, it's my own opinion, that it would reduce probably the number of outstanding warrants when you had people that maybe are homeless and live in downtown St. Stephen that could easily make their way to a court in St. Stephen, but then have to find a way to get to St. John. So
I think another issue that you have to deal with now that 20 years ago, 30 years ago wouldn't have been something that you would have had to even think about would be a lot of online scams too. It's a whole other frontier of crimes and criminals often not even in our country. Can you talk a little bit about how you have to look out for people in the community in that way, and what scams are prevalent right now?
It's tough, and we deal with probably more than we think, because oftentimes people will come in and they'll describe what's happened to them, and quite quickly we recognize it as a scam. But as you pointed out, the vast majority of the time these people are not operating within the country, let alone our jurisdiction or our province. They're very slick. They do this for a living. So you have people in different countries, and people go to work doing whatever. They go to work and their job is to scam people, and they're very good at it. And I feel for people, because people will come in, and we've had people here, other places I've worked, they've lost their life savings, and it's really tough to be able to have to say to that person. And I try to be honest when you see these, but chances are nobody's getting arrested, and you're not getting your money back, because the networks and that these people operate in. Again, they're different places. Oftentimes, if you're saying one of the common things is to send somebody money, wire transfer, or Western Union or something like that, it goes to one point, which might be because we've done work and tried to find some of these. So they'll transfer it to a address in Vancouver, and we'll have the local police there go check, and then that's just a storefront for a place in overseas somewhere. So it's there is and we really push people to this Canada Anti-Fraud Center, and it's a federal agency that basically works as a kind of a clearinghouse to assemble this from all across the country, and they work with international police agencies, Interpol and whatnot, to try to tackle some of these rings. And you can go onto social media and find examples where they've had success in taking these people down. It's very tough, because we were talking about it earlier, but people feel ashamed that they've I've got caught up in this and I've become a victim. I don't want to admit it, but at a minimum it needs to be reported to us. Again, I'm not going to lie and say we're going to catch everyone and get people's money back, but it helps us to understand what's going on. So it's one of these things that it's 100% preventable through education, and I've brought it up to councils, most recently St. Andrews Council last week, but I said we have presentations that we'll come and do to groups. We just need a venue to do it and to talk, because it is a preventable crime, and almost every time we turn around it seems like there's a new scam, and we're always playing catch up because these people are so innovative and aggressive in their tactics. And but there's a few things for people, kind of the golden rule, but unsolicited phone calls, emails, text messages, do not answer them, do not respond, block them. If you need to, like somebody's posing as your bank, and you say you bank with Bank of Montreal, and somebody calls and says there's a problem with your account, never ever take that at face value. Hang up, call the number on the back of your bank card, call the local branch, go into the local branch, ask them, ask us. And there's always a few key things that lead us to this is a scam.
And I would recommend people to follow you on RCMP for New Brunswick on social media. You do a great job, not just of telling people different arrests that have been made, different things you're looking out for, but also giving people ideas of what current scams are happening in New Brunswick, from the grandparent scam to the life insurance scam. There's so many, but you do a really good job of communicating. Where should people follow you if they want to keep up to date?
We have our social media is, and I'll apologize in advance because I'm not a social media person, but we have our RCMP New Brunswick Facebook, and we also have I guess it's called X now, the Twitter. We have that for the RCMP New Brunswick, and so I would highly suggest if you're a social media person that you subscribe to both those things. And
I appreciate you both.
Our websites as well. We've got our online crime reporting, online crime mapping. And we also have like our daily operational report that kind of gives you a snapshot of what's going on in different areas of the province every day. So there's lots of information being pushed out there. It's just a matter of accessing it.
And I appreciate both of you taking the time to come in today and talk to the people of Southwest New Brunswick. Any final thoughts on today's show?
We're in the community, and like Staff Sergeant Peter said, we're only as good as the information that we're given. I mean, it's a mutually beneficial relationship in terms of the police and the community. If you see something that you think we need to know, please don't be shy. Nobody's going to say, I wish that person didn't call. I mean, more times than not, we say, I wish somebody would have called. So if you do see something that you think we need to know about, please call us, report it, stop by the office, and we'll definitely follow up. And it might be that one piece of information we need to solve a crime or prevent something from happening in the community.
No, thank you very much for taking the time to have us on. And we'd say a message I could get out to people is, if you have an issue or a concern, come talk to us. You can find us, we're St. George, St. Stephen, St. Andrews, Macadam, and Grand Manan, and just come talk to us, I guess, it would be the biggest thing, because oftentimes, you hear about things on social media, or you hear people that have issues, but we never hear people come talk to us. So, we live here, we know the issues, we want to work with the community to solve problems, so.
Yeah. Well, please come back anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My guests today have been Sergeant Chris Henderson and Staff Sergeant Geoff Peters. I'm Vicki Hogarth. Thank you for watching Southwest Magazine.
Southwest Magazine is a news and public affairs production of CHCO Television.